from the dung heap, everybody. These are my friends. A lot of them.
Friends.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
And we're live. Hello. SPTV. Hello, good morning. Happy Monday. Here we are, a new week. So, hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing good. Afternoon. Also, if you're in Europe.
That's right. That's right. Good afternoon to you. Absolutely. And so we have our friend Mark Turi with us this morning or this afternoon to talk about one aspect of this crazy world of LRH that he crafted in his mind to be a part of Scientology. And you were a staff member, right? If you want to just give us like a little background for those of us who haven't heard of you. I know most of us have, but just give us a little bit of your background if you can.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Marilyn.
Yeah, thank you for being
my name
here.
is Mark Turi. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and I spent 3 years as a member of the Church of Scientology. I joined in May of 2005 and I left in May of 2008. And during that time, I spent the first 2 years that I was a Scientologist as a public. And I spent essentially the last year, maybe, subtract 2 weeks or something. But most of that year, the final year was I was a staff member. And I was a staff member at the Church of Scientology in Berlin, Germany, at the Ideal Org. And that was from May of 2007 until February of 2008. And then from March until May of 2008, I was a staff member at the Church of Scientology Ideal Org in San Francisco, California. And I was really only there for maybe 10 weeks. So yeah, roughly, I guess, 11 and a half months as a staff member. I've been out and speaking out since the summer of 2008, here and there. I've done lots of interviews, but certainly within the past, I would say, year or two, I've done more, which has actually been really great because when I first got out, it was really hard to share your story, especially on YouTube. And now it's getting easier. So currently I live in Budapest in Hungary, and I'm pursuing my master's degree, and I'm on summer break. So I've just been trying to, do that for a little while.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to see you again. I think the last time we streamed together was maybe January. And
was just after the New Year, yeah.
I have to say that was one of my favorite. I mean, I think I have almost 400 videos. That really sticks out in my mind. It was one of my favorite streams that I've done with, collaborations that I've done, and it was just eye-opening because you're one of the smartest guys I know, people I know, and even you joined a cult, so it makes me not feel so bad. But
everybody.
but I was just amazed to learn about the difference between Dianetics auditing and quote regular auditing, as we know with the e-meter. It was just very fascinating, and it was one of my favorite streams, like I said. So here we are for another one of my favorite streams. So as I've been saying to my audience, I am very fascinated and just intrigued by the whole human psyche, human behavior of it all, when it comes down to cults and why people join, why they stay, what happens in a cult, what is the mindset. And when you mentioned that you had been in staff and that there was a whole course that
Mhm.
basically makes you agree to be, basically a slave. I was like, whoa, I got to hear about this because in your show, you have all these screen shares underneath. I'm looking at, they make it seem so official and technical and everything. And I'm just wondering, is this because it came from LRH, right? He laid out this whole thing about staff. Is this considered part of the quote tech, or is it just like, I don't know, like practices or whatever?
It's a mix because there is tech inside of this stuff, especially when it comes to ethics. So ethics tech
Oh,
is a term, and we can briefly get into what they call chits, ethics chits, which is essentially things that you write to snitch on other people. Like there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can literally snitch on your coworkers if they're, out ethics or they're
yeah.
doing something that they're not supposed to. So that is part of the tech, but then there's also a lot of admin,
Snitching on
which is
people is
also considered tech.
technology?
Well, there's a way that you do it, right? So it's more like the way that you actually write up those things that's tech. So there's like, for example, there's a knowledge report, also called a KR. So that's like a specific thing that has a technology because you're actually writing it in a very specific kind of way. You have to actually begin with writing certain events in a certain order. And so that's considered part of the tech because that's part of ethics tech. So
Mhm,
it's a little odd because it's like you're right. It's like you're just sort of snitching on people, but they make it more elaborate and they start defining it differently and they start adding all this kind of like, you know, processes and things to it when really you're just snitching. I mean, that's all it is. And
yeah.
they're just making it fancier, you know. It's a
It's
fancy way of
how you
snitching.
it's how you snitch that they call technology. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, pretty much. So there's also admin tech. So we're going to get a little bit
Mhm,
into that. Their administration is also considered technology. And I'm not an expert in that kind of stuff, but you'll see when we get through this kind of some of these staff and sort of staff policies and so forth that there is tech mixed
mhm,
into that because whenever anything is applied in Scientology, when you apply a policy or you apply ethics or you apply auditing or you apply whatever, it's considered tech because there's an application to it essentially.
mhm.
So everything is tech essentially.
I'm just popping up some greetings. Hi,
Of
everybody.
course.
Thank you for joining us.
Everyone.
This is great. So, when you when you were about to join staff, what did that look like? I mean, you were a public Scientologist when you started, and so you started the courses. How far did you get, and how did you end up on staff? And and then we'll go through, like you said, the courses and all the things that you had to go through to become staff.
Of course. Yeah, of course. So, as I mentioned before, I discovered and joined Scientology in May 2005, and in May 2007, that's when I officially joined staff in Berlin. So, through those 2 years, essentially, I was a public, I had a job in Europe and another country, and I was going back and forth to the old Berlin org, so the pre-ideal Berlin org. And I got to know some people there. So if we fast forward to December of 2006, I went to Los Angeles with my mom. I had previously been there in May of 2005, which is when I discovered Scientology. So a year and a half later, I was back in Los Angeles and I went to the Shrine Auditorium because every year they have a New Year's Eve event, which they hold at the Shrine. And during this live event, this presentation, I had no idea that they had opened the new Berlin Ideal org. And so the presentation introduced that to me. And even in the video, I spotted people that I knew because I had been doing courses there from
Oh,
around 2005, 2006. So long story short was, I don't remember if I contacted the Berlin org or they contacted me, but around, I would say like the late December, January of late December 2006, early 2007, I was put on what's called a cycle. And essentially, that's just another fancy Scientology's word that means I had to do some things before I left, to join staff. So I
Mhm.
signed the contract, and then I had a couple other things that I had to do. I was also working at the time, so I had to, give at a certain point I had to, give them my 2 weeks notice and whatever. And then I flew on. I think uh, said the second week or something. I think it was the 12th of May of 2007. Flew to Berlin and started staff. So really, it was a coincidence. Had I really not been in Los Angeles, I don't know if I would have even seen that New Year's Eve event back in Toronto because I wasn't going into the org. I was just doing an extension course. So it was by, pure chance that I saw this video, that they presented this video and, got interested and then a few months later left. So that was sort of how I got on. And then
Right.
by the time I got to Berlin, it had been a pretty new, fresh org. It had only been open, I think, for about maybe 5.5 months at that time.
Oh. Okay, so before we get into the courses you took and the screen sharing that you have for me, I just want to pop up your channel. It's
Course,
Mark
yes.
Turi. There's your
Yeah.
new channel. You used to have another one, but we're gonna promote this one, and it's at Mark Turi 123, I believe. Or is that the handle?
That's correct. That's
It'd be
correct.
easy.
Yes.
So everyone check that out and give him a subscribe if you could. That would be awesome.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to get my hours, my subscription, so I can do lives and do
Right.
more stuff as well. I like to do PowerPoint presentations, so I like to do more of those.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So you're up to 20 subscribers. I think you had maybe
Nice.
15,
Thank you,
16
everybody.
earlier. So if we can
That's
get them
right.
30
Yeah.
more, that would be awesome.
Please, please, please do what
We
Marilyn
can get
says. She's nice.
not always. That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah. Nice to me. So who cares about everyone else?
Like,
I
oh boy. All right. So
know.
where do you want to go next? Where do you want to go next?
Yeah, so when you start staff, just in general, with myself, my own personal experience was, I had flown to Berlin, and before I left Berlin, because I was leaving a job in retail, and I was doing pretty good, and I wanted to actually, you know, join staff because I'd been thinking about it for a while. But one of my biggest questions is, of course, what do you do with money? Pardon me.
Yeah.
And before I left staff, my staff recruiter, her name was Helena, she told me that I could be making, a little bit of money right now, meaning, in early 2007 as we were exchanging emails, but that the Berlin org, was going to go what is called Saint Hill size, which I can get into in a moment. And once we cross that threshold, I could be making anywhere from 500 to 1,000 euros a week or a month or whatever, like just some astronomical kind of amount of money.
Right.
And initially, I thought, great, because I was making minimum wage, $9 an hour, $8 an hour, whatever it was back then. And I was doing pretty well at my job, but I would not only be getting more money, but I'd be working in Scientology. Of course, I'll go through why that's not the case in a moment. But when it comes to the actual courses that you take, one of the reasons why individuals like myself sign a staff contract, and there's two staff contracts. So
Mhm.
one is for 2.5 years, and the other is for 5 years. Um, the stipulations in the contract, one of the benefits, okay, there's a lot of disadvantages, but one of the benefits is that you get your any courses and any services that you take, any auditing that you get, is free, essentially. You're supposed to be allotted 2.5 hours of studying every single day, essentially. So I was on a schedule where I was working 7 days a week, which again was this horrible schedule, but I was supposed to be allotted 2.5 hours. So that would be, 2.5 times 7. So that's a lot of hours where you can blow by courses, you can get auditing. For some people, it's 5 days a week. Sometimes it's 2 days a week. But really, why people join staff is because, Scientology is infamously extremely expensive. It's thousands and thousands of dollars for auditing, for courses,
Yeah.
etc. At least when you go up the bridge, of course, the introductory services are usually under a few hundred. Regardless, you would still get all that stuff for free. And so that's a big reason why people join. So one of the first things that they did was I had to choose which schedule that I was going to follow. And unbeknownst to me, it became a 7 days a week schedule. It became something called full time. And I was essentially working Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 11 p.m. And then Saturdays and Sundays from 1 p.m. until 11 p.m. And that was 7 days a week. And I did that for a few months. I then actually blew, which happens because everybody hits a wall and they get burned out.
Mm-hmm.
I went to what's called a full-time schedule, and then I went back to the full-time schedule. And again, that was unbeknownst to me because I thought it would just be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But it ended up being double what I thought. I was working, 92 hours a week, and the money wasn't any different. It was whatever. Was not enough to live on, and it certainly wasn't, a few €100 a week or whatever that I was promised. We also never went single size. That was just a scam
Right.
to get more people on board. But that was kind of the first thing. After that, I started what, again, if you haven't been on staff before, you start these 3 staff status courses. So the first one is staff status 0. Everything in Scientology starts with a 0, and then staff status 1 and staff status 2. And I can go into some, specifics about those courses, but to sort of give you the more generalized version, staff status 0 is a very broad generalization course, an orientation course of the actual staff itself. So you look at study the org board, and then you also go through each individual department and division to get to know certain people who are what we call terminals, which would just be called coworkers. So you meet
Terminals.
yeah, I know, terminals. You get to know the executive director and certain big, and so you just know who they are. And for me, that was probably the most beneficial of all the courses because, imagine there are some places, if you've ever worked in an office or something, where it could take you weeks and weeks to weeks just to get to know people's names and who these people are around you. And you're doing it on the first day or 2 or 3. So, they get that stuff out of the way. So that was probably the most beneficial. And then there's staff status 1 and staff status 2, where you basically learn your responsibilities as a staff member. And you also learn about the quote unquote ethics of being a staff member. So staff status 1 is just introducing you to like what you have to do to take leave if you want to quit, what's a freeloader bill, which again, we can get into all those things. And then staff status 2 is like all kind of the ethics stuff, how you report on other people and so on. And so I did all 3 of those courses. I did staff status 0 in most of staff status 2 in Berlin, and then I finished staff status 2 in San Francisco, and went on once you finish. And this will just be a brief point to finish my thought. But when you go on to,
I want to do a little bit of a recap of what you talked about so far, and then we'll go on because we got more people coming in. So I don't want to have them go all the way to the back, the front of the.
No, it's okay.
Beginning.
This final thought is that once you pass staff status 2, because you have a post, you get what's called a mini hat, and a hat it's supposed to be the course that introduces you to your position, and then you go on to a full hat, and that's even more. So if you look at the line from orientation to being fully trained, you have these, I guess, 5 courses. So yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. And it
Yeah,
sounds a little bit like a cult. So
a
when
little.
you flew, yeah. So you gave up your, how old were you at this point when you first started in staff?
I was 24.
So
I was
you
24
quit
years
your
old.
job in Los Angeles and you flew to Berlin.
Oh, I was in Canada at the time. I was
Oh,
I
you're
was
in
living in,
Canada.
yeah. I'm
From
sorry. I
Canada
only
to
got to
Berlin.
Los Angeles for a holiday.
Okay, all right. So from Canada to Berlin,
Yeah.
and your understanding was that you would work Monday through Friday,
Hmm.
still sort of full time, and that
Yep.
eventually you would get money. Now, did you think you were going to have another job on the side? How did you live? Where did you sleep? All those things. And first of all, I want to know that, like, how did they expect you to
Yeah.
live, and how did you make do with what you had? Like, how did you survive?
Well, that was one interesting thing was um, there's an agreement, of course, between Germany and Canada, just like there is in many other countries. A Canadian citizen can enter Germany and we can, live there, be there for 3 months for 90 days. And then after 90 days, you need to have some kind of visa or residence permit in order to stay. So for the first couple months, I was living with other staff members, two other staff members. They were a young couple. So I slept on their couch, and they had like a one bedroom in an area of Berlin called Tiergarten. Um, and I was just, I mean, I hated it because I wasn't making a lot of money. But interestingly enough, I made the most amount of money in my first couple months, which would have been anywhere from
Really?
40 to 60 euros a week, which is still nothing, but it was still the
Nothing.
highest average that I made. Then it would slip down to 15, 20, 25 by the end. But really, I was dipping into my savings because I had worked and saved.
Mhm.
And then when the 90-day part came around, I had a lot of communication with what they call the DSA, or the Department of Special Affairs, the legal matters department. And I kept trying to inform them that, listen, like, I have 90 days. If not, like, I'm technically illegal in Germany. I can't stay past 90 days. I need something some visa, some permit that's going to help me stay for the next 2.5 years, because that's the whole point.
Right.
The problem is that Germany and Scientology don't get along very well, so there are no visas
I heard that.
that one can take. Scientology is basically considered a company, but it doesn't have religious status. It's falls into this very odd kind of anomaly. But I did end up eventually getting a 1 year residence permit. So when you talk about jobs, I wanted to get a job. I was being offered jobs on the side, to clean, to babysit, to do all this kind of stuff, which I was taking here and there. But my residence permit basically said that I couldn't work unless a German couldn't do that job. So I had to sort of prove to the government that a German couldn't do
Oh,
the job that I wanted. And I also had to take German lessons. And I took these German lessons at a private school for a couple weeks because it
mhm.
was dipping into my time at the org. I was getting paid next to nothing. I stopped them. I told them people I was stopping. So the people at the org had full knowledge that it wasn't going to work out, and they probably just should have sent me home anyway, like,
Mhm.
like, to have some responsibility. But in Scientology, they kept asking me, like, do you really want to be here? And of course you're going to say yes. And in Scientology, that's an excuse. Well, you'll just make it go right, which is
Right.
something that they'll
We've
say in
heard that
Scientology.
before.
If you really want to be here, you'll just make it go right. Doesn't matter
Right.
legalities, morality, ethics, concerns, intricacies of law. No, they don't care. You'll just make it go right magically. And
No
of
matter
course,
what.
when it
Yeah.
doesn't go right, it's your fault, right? It was my fault.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah,
So what did they
so
put
that's
you
what
through with
happened.
the
And
courses? Yeah. So
yeah.
what do you want me to pull up first that you'd like to present?
Yeah, well, essentially, just to sort of finish that too, was
Oh, go
eventually
ahead. Yep.
how I got supplementing income was a bunch of Sea Org members lived in the apartment because I actually ended up finding a 2-bedroom that I shared with my roommate. So my roommate was able to pay, and then we had the Sea Org come in and they were able to pay my rent. So that was at least good for the last 6 months. But when we look at staff, I think the most interesting one is keeping Scientology working.
All
So the
right, which
first
one is
one,
that?
keep
Oh, that's not
Scientology
it.
working.
I can't realize. Is that
That's
it?
the one. Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
So
the one you want?
I was exactly, yeah. So what happens is when I was in Scientology, when I was doing my courses, I was always in what's called the public course room or the Div 6 course room. And that's where you do those introductory services. So successful communications, the Dianetics auditing courses, what are called life improvement courses. But when you become a staff member, when you take your staff status courses, they're done in the academy. So after I finished staff status 0, which again is this orientation that just brings you to different people, different departments, you get a checklist and whatever, you do staff status 1. So I opened this course pack, they call it, is a 3-ring binder with a bunch of mimeoed copies like this that you see in front of you. And the first policy that you read is this policy on staff status 1, which is keeping Scientology working, number 1. And I had no experience with this before. And it's quite fanatical in the sense. I'm just going to bring it up for me here. So yeah, it's a very fanatical type of document. As you can see here, it's an HCO policy letter that was written on the 7th of February, 1965, when L. Ron Hubbard was at East Grinstead before 2 years later he would go, into hiding and start the Sea Org. But the highlights on this is really like, okay, now this is what Scientology is. And I
And
want to sort
not
of
to
go
interrupt, but
through.
that's the policy letter that the famous crazy black turtleneck video that
Yeah.
Tom Cruise did, right? And I don't know, it was
Mhm.
2004 or something. And he kept talking about KSW. So that's where I remember it from. But yeah, this is the policy letter he's talking about.
Exactly. And this is what you're supposed to do in Scientology. You're supposed to, KSW, keeping Scientology working. That's exactly it. And there's a few highlights in this one that I'll go through here. So they talk about here. This is kind of the idea that Scientology works 100% of the time if it's applied 100% correctly. So when it isn't applied 100% correctly, they have, job insurance to say, hey, it's your fault.
Right.
Scientology, like, that's the guarantee. So it's your overts or your sins or your unethical behavior that's making Scientology not work, because Scientology works. And if you get to this here, and I remember having to memorize these 10 points. Okay, so the whole thing on Scientology is what is correct technology, and what is the difference between correct technology and incorrect technology. Incorrect technology, another word for that, is squirreling, okay, or having some kind of manipulative practice. And so just to go over some of the things here, I'm brand new. I was green in Scientology, and I'm reading these things. I'm reading, okay, it's 100% true, 100% of the time, whatever. And then
You're
I have
being
to
brainwashed.
memorize. Yeah, exactly. And then, okay, so it's having the correct technology, knowing the technology, knowing it is correct, teaching correctly the correct technology, applying the technology, seeing that the technology is correctly applied, hammering out of existence incorrect technology, knocking out incorrect applications, closing the door on any possibility of incorrect technology, and closing the door on incorrect application. So you actually have to memorize these 10 points, and you will get checked on them when you're in the course room. And also, if you tell someone you're on staff status 1, whether it's a supervisor, a fellow coworker, fellow staff member, they will say, what are the 10 points of correct technology? And you have to verbatim say, one, having the correct technology, two, knowing, and on and on and on. So this is really drilled
it's
into your head.
Sort of like memorizing scripture, like what I do.
Absolutely.
Like you just keep, driving it home. Yeah. Okay.
And I've never been like
Gotcha.
that. I know friends that, Christian friends that would be like, you give them some random version, like John 2:5, and they'd be like, oh, I know that. And it's like, whoa. Or like, I don't know,
She said,
Revelations
for
8,
fuck's sake.
6.
Hey, T from Perth Scientology Audit, for fuck's sake, I would go mad.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing about that is I was already indoctrinated 2 years before, and I had already done at point one. Yeah.
By design.
Believe me, at one, I was lost. Yeah. The word one. But I had been indoctrinated. So I had done a course called Successful Communication, where you do these TR drills. So this was it was a different version of stuff that I had done before. So by the time, this comes up, it's still more intense, but you still figure, well, it's just Scientology, and I've already done these other things and whatever. He talks here about, all this kind of nonsense. He always blames other people, and, but really, I just wanted to, the reactive bank. I mean, it's not all of this is super, super, but yeah, here's a super important.
He says flunk.
Yeah,
I'd flunk.
Here's what I love. Okay, this is how melodramatic Hubbard is. We're not playing some minor game in Scientology. This isn't cute or something to do for lack of something better. The whole agonized future of this planet, every man, woman, and child on it, and your own destiny for the next endless trillion years depends on what you do here and now with and in Scientology. This is a deadly serious activity, and if we miss getting out of the trap now, we may never again have another chance. Remember, this is our first chance to do so in the endless trillions of years of the past. Don't muff it now, muff. It's got another connotation if you're British, by the way, Hubbard, because it seems unpleasant or unsocial to do 7, 8, 9, or 10. Do them and we'll win. L. Ron Hubbard, founder. And like by the time it's like this crescendo, it's like by the time you read this page, you're like, holy shit, I've got this fire under my ass. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The whole agonized future of the planet.
I know.
No wonder why Tom Cruise is like, I'm like, shh, shh.
Yeah.
And if I see a car accident, I know that I'm the only one that can help or whatever.
240, I'm trying to see where he says it works 100% of the time if you apply it 100% correctly. It's in here somewhere, but regardless, this is where it kind of starts. So this is from staff status 1. So again, this is like the first thing you read. This is what I would call, in my opinion, and Marilyn, you can see if you agree with this from your background, I would call this fundamentalist doctrine.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely. Or a fanatical doctrine or a fundamentalist doctrine, a radicalized, it's almost like a manifesto, like,
well, yeah, so
this is it.
It's not, the very nature of fundamentalism is that there's no deviating, there's no interpretation, there's no subjectivity. It's like word for word. You have to apply it 100% correct 100% of the time. And if you don't get results, it's your fault. That's fundamentalism in a nutshell. Yeah.
That's right. That's 100% correct. Yeah. And it's just off the wall. It's melodramatic. It's just all this stuff. Like it doesn't matter. He says here, it doesn't matter if it's unpleasant or unsocial to do 7, 8, 9, or 10. So what's 7, 8, 9, or 10? So it's hammering out of existence incorrect technology, knocking out, closing the door. This is all if you ever remember anything. And I know he's not the best figure anymore. I've never met him or anything, but when Marty Rathman was getting attacked for doing the squirrel squad and the anti-squirrel squads or whatever, this really is that 7, 8, 9, or 10, even though it made all of those Scientologists who were harassing him, criminally harassing him and his wife, made them look like total creeps and total, jackasses. Well, in that policy, they were shutting the door on incorrect technology because at the time, Marty Rathman was actually auditing people outside of the church as an independent. So even if it completely screws up your reputation and whatever, it doesn't matter, because in the end you are justified by doing 7, 8, 9, and 10, because of course that's an incorrect technology and that doesn't work. Only Scientology from the Church of Scientology is true and works. So you're
Right. And look
always
at the
justified.
strong language there. There's hammering out, knocking out, closing the
Yeah,
door,
yeah,
Yeah, it's just all this absolute
fanatical shit.
intensity. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intensity and urgency. And that's like what always keeping you running, always keeping you guessing, always keeping, yeah, it very culty across the
And the
board.
other thing is this one too. We will not speculate here on why this was so or how I came to rise above the bank. So basically, I did it, but we're not going to speculate how, right? It's almost like I did this thing. I have all these ideas, but we're not going to speculate. Just follow what I'm saying. Like, he's not going to give any details,
Jeez.
right? At all.
Yeah.
It's just I have these ideas and this special,
Hmm.
whatever you want to say, the special attributes, but we're not going to
Hmm.
speculate on how I got them. And then this, of course,
Right.
he
It's a
talked more
carrot on the
about.
stick. It's like it's a carrot on the stick because it's like, oh, you'll find out later, And then all of a sudden
Yeah,
it's like Xenu and the body thetans,
yeah. And then
right? We're not
they've
going to
got
tell you.
his whole thing on psychiatry supporting this is the fact that man has never before evolved workable mental technology, and emphasizing it is the vicious technology he did evolve: psychiatry, psychology, surgery, shock treatment, whips. L. Ron Hubbard and his, BDSM shit, duress, punishment, etc. So it's
Hmm.
like they're just lumping everything and saying that psychiatry and psychology doesn't know anything. It's Hubbard, but why? Well, Hubbard's not going to speculate, on why he was able to do this. And then so that we have climbed out of the mud by whatever good luck and good sense and refuse to sink back into it again. And then see that 7, 8, 9, and 10 above are ruthlessly followed, and we will never be stopped. Relax them, get reasonable about it, and we will be punished. Now, reasonable in
It's
Scientology
bad.
is a bad word,
Right, right, right.
and we will perish. So essentially, what they're saying is it's all on not just the group, but it's all on you. So, I'm reading this thing as a 24-year-old man who had done
Yeah.
some things. Growing up in Canada, we're pretty laid back, passive people. We're like the Midwest, if the Midwest was even more passive, right? Or Scandinavian, right? We're not tough people. We don't really like to be strong or whatever. We're kind of just passive. And I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, is this it? This is
Yeah.
Scientology? Like, what the? And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you've signed up for it, so I guess this is it. And you know what I mean? And like, it's
Yeah, and
just,
I think
oh
that
god. So
that age too, the early 20s,
yeah,
is ripe for this because I know in my case it was like I wasn't well, I was adopted, but I wasn't in my foster
right.
parents, under their umbrella anymore, and but I hadn't started my life. I was very idealistic. I was searching. I was wondering like,
Yeah,
what am I going to do? What's the purpose? Why am I here? So yeah, that's what cults really um like to swoop in during that time, or
absolutely.
if you're,
And
yeah,
after this, I will make reference to two different policies which I couldn't find online. I don't think they're online. Um, But when you go through staff status one, you also read a policy called leaving and leaves. And of course, that means like, hey, I might want to actually leave staff. What do I have to do? And essentially, you can't leave staff, but what they tell you to do is to go see. I think it was the DINR, which is called the Director of something and Routing. Anyway, they're in HCO, so and we'll get into the
what
org
is
board because I do have
HCO?
a thing of it. HCO is the Hubbard Communication Office. It's like
Okay.
where they have the ethics and stuff like this. And
Hmm.
again, when we go to the org board, because I do
Okay.
have a copy of it, I can elaborate that a little
Yeah,
more.
I've heard of the org board, but
Yeah,
yeah, I really want to see. I
it's
want to
it's
see it.
it's division one. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can only go see a person in HCO or the chaplain, and then they'll ask you, do you really want to leave staff? If you say yes, you're a terrible person. If you say no, you have to get it done right. So you're in a trap, right? They've trapped you. So
Yep.
you learn about that. And essentially you just can't leave. The other thing what you learn is about the freeloader bill. So I mentioned before that one of the perks of being on staff is that you get these free courses. You get allotted 2.5 hours a day to study. So either 2, 5 usually, or 7 days a week, depending on the org. But the problem is, and you don't learn this until you do staff status 1, is that if you break your contract, you do not go through your 2.5 or 5 year contract, you will owe the money that the courses would normally cost to the public. You as a staff member then owe that to the church, and you cannot do any Scientology until that debt is paid off 100%. And so those are the two things that you learn. So I would say once you get through these things, the fact that you really can't leave and the fact that you actually owe what's supposed to be free is more like an indentured servant. You really kind of become contracted where you can leave, but then there's just grave punishment. You're not making any money, so I would say it's more, a little bit more like that, but
Yeah.
you really aren't doing a lot. You're not making any money, so you're not going to be financially independent. So it's not like you can just walk away. And then people who are deeply
Right.
invested in Scientology, in order for that to continue on in the future, and one day do their what they call their grades auditing and their OT levels, they will move heaven and earth to pay back their freeloader bills. In some cases, a couple $1,000s, in some cases over $100,000. This also applies to the Sea Org, of course. So when a Sea Org member
Right.
leaves, they could be indebted over $100,000 for whatever,
Now,
and
how
they
much
they
does
will
that
do it.
include? Does that include the courses that you take in order to learn about your job and how to do your job? I mean,
Oh
a lot
yes,
of these
yep.
courses, well, that's, I mean, in the US, I mean, as far as if you were at a legitimate company and not a pseudo
Mhm.
religion here, if you're taking courses to learn, how to do your job, when you start a
Mhm.
job and you go through orientation and all that, you don't owe for that. Usually they pay for that. It's
Sure. They
insane.
pay you exactly.
Yeah.
Not in Scientology. So I got a freeloader bill after leaving San Francisco that was somewhere around 5 to 6,000 American dollars. I haven't paid into it because I don't care. I'm done. I'm
You
out.
still owe?
But I would still owe it. Yeah, I would say if for some
Still.
reason I wanted to get in good standing with the church, I would have to go do an ethics cycle. I'd have to pay that money and then I could come back. But that's not what I'm going to do. Plus, I don't think they
No.
want me anyway, so who cares? But that included, by the way, that included staff status 0, 1, 2, and a couple other the what was called the establishment officer mini hat. So those are 4 training courses. Plus, I think I had 1 or 2 extension courses, including sec check auditing, which they don't tell you about. Every hour that you get audited for sec checking or for what's called method 1 word clearing also has an amount on it, usually $2, $3, $4, $500 an hour. So my $5,000 to $6,000, I think it was closer to 6, were for those courses, those training courses, an extension course, and those bits of sec check and method 1 word clearing auditing, which maybe in total was somewhere around 5 to 8 hours. So yeah, so stuff that is again stuff that is 0, 1, and 2 are have an amount. I forget how much they have. I think they're
Yeah.
in the hundreds, if not close to $1,000 each. But they go on your
Yeah.
freeloader bill if
Where
you
you
put
basically
stuff.
learn that you're going to be an indentured servant.
Pretty
That's
much,
crazy.
pretty much.
Yeah.
It's
So
it's
where do you wanna
absolute
go next in this
insanity.
whole yeah, I was gonna say
Uh,
this whole
yeah.
crazy, loop here.
Let's do the
Where do we
how about we go to the staff status 2 courses. So the third one on my screen.
is
So
that it?
for this one, so this again, this is from WikiLeaks. There was a big dump of Scientology courses and so forth, like 10 plus years ago, and WikiLeaks got this, and it's a shame they don't have this for staff status 0 or 1, or else you guys would get a little bit more tangible, references on what I'm talking about. But at least they have staff status 2. So I mentioned, okay, staff status 1 is the or staff status 0 is the orientation. Staff status 2 is really indoctrinating on this is what we're doing, this is what you're going to be as a staff member, and it's really basics. But staff status 2 is like, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. So you can see here, this is the dynamics triangle. This is the stamp of the S and the triangles at the bottom left. That's a Scientology symbol. And then the Sea Org symbol is on the bottom right. And I just wanted to go through and look at some of these things that you do. This is a pretty typical, table of contents. This is what they call a check sheet. And a check sheet, you get your name, your division, your department, your position, who's your immediate senior, date started. They always have what the purposes of the course, the length of the course, which nobody ever does. The length of the course, it always takes much longer. My case,
Right.
it took almost a year. Prerequisites and certifications. And essentially what you're dealing with here is, if you look at this, you do read Keeping Scientology Working again. You always read Keeping Scientology Working.
Mhm.
So it's not just on staff status 1. You read it again on staff status 2. They drill into that. And then they're going to talk to you about safeguarding, technology, technical, all this kind of thing. You get into the organization. You learn a little bit about the org boards and, work and what does it mean to do work. You get into your, duties of a staff member and so forth. If you want to transfer, this is another scam. So you really can only transfer if you replace yourself. So the org doesn't replace you. You have to find someone to replace you. And usually it's someone who isn't a staff member, and it's horrendous. They talk about demotions, communications. I want to get into that one, which is called the three basket system, in just a moment. That's fucking crazy.
Okay.
Routing dispatches, again, supplies. This is all like, okay, the day-to-day operations, staff meetings, auditing, and all this kind of stuff, which again, cleanliness and tidiness. Hubbard was 100%. If he didn't have schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and whatever else, he definitely had some kind of obsessive compulsion, especially with cleanliness and tardiness and this kind of thing. So you learn how to
Except for his
clean
teeth,
and
they
all
didn't
this
look
kind of
very
stuff,
clean.
except for his teeth. Don't
Yeah.
blame him though. Blame the psychs and the dentists
Yep.
who,
Right.
whatever.
Exactly.
But that's that. So essentially, just to give
Mhm.
you guys kind of a brief overview here again, Keeping Scientology Working. Once you get drilled in again, you learn about the organization. You learn about what's your duties as a staff member. You learn how to communicate within an org. You learn about the supplies. I was a supply officer. That you learn about ethics, and then you learn about the course completion. So those are the type of things. And then all of the stuff. This is photocopied, but this is what we saw previously. So this is all
Mhm.
the different really the same policies, and it would probably be normally white paper with green ink or white paper with red ink, and that
Mhm.
just means the green ink is technical, and the red is admin. So safeguarding tech and all. What I do want to go through though is if you can do the next one, the OEC zero volume,
Okay.
because
Let
there's a
me just
couple of
ask
things.
you,
Yeah.
let me just ask you, as you were going through this, if you remember, um,
Mhm.
do you remember like how you felt? What are some of that? Because I'm just thinking as you go deeper and deeper, right? The cognitive dissonance starts to get more and more, larger than life, right? Um, do you remember having some like doubts or questions or things that you were afraid to ask or that you had to rationalize in your mind? Because a lot of these things are like, whoa, wait a minute, like where we're talking about punishments and demotions and that's like, were you putting it on yourself like, oh God, I got to be careful not to get demoted or that, like what were some of the things that you may have had questions or doubts or fears about?
Well, it was pretty obvious to me within a short period of time that like it was completely inefficient. And I'm no expert in business organization or business management, but you don't have to be. It's just completely and utterly bureaucracy and utter bureaucracy for the sake of it, and nothing works. And so,
Yeah.
I actually was on a stream yesterday with Clearwater Chad, Joe Giuseppe, and Holly, the Scientology geek.
Oh,
And
nice.
we discussed something very briefly, which again I'll just briefly go over, which is, let's say you're a public and you want to donate money for a course. You have two people that you can donate money to, two terminals. One is you can donate that to what we'll see as Division 2, which is disbursement, or Division 3, which is treasury. If you donate your money, let's say it's a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, the money that goes to Div 2 goes directly to gross income. But if you donate to Treasury, it goes directly into the amount that pays the bills. So what is so stupid about Scientology is that they don't collect all of the money and pay the staff and the bills from the same source.
Right.
So there's this internal competition that happens that's extremely brutal, that just pins people against people, when if you're in an organization you want some kind of cooperation and you want some kind of cohesion. And
Right.
we know too, it's not the 50s anymore. The hard sell, the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross type of business, it doesn't work. People are put off by it. And most businesses today have some kind of compassion. They do things for their employers, because their employees, because they'll get good work in return, whether it's extended vacation or taking care of children on a work campus or whatever, because we know that. And so these are the things that Scientology, it, to me, it's not only backwards, but it's insidious, because
Yeah.
this is L. Ron Hubbard pinning people against people. So it's those little things that I looked at and I was like, why the hell is this doing that? And why is this and this? And then there's all these contradictions. And when
Right.
you look at ethics and like, why are these things happening? But I kept it to myself, because you don't, yeah, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, you don't want to get in trouble, because
Right.
you will get in trouble.
Right. And you're always taught that, oh, you'll understand later. Like, it's
Yeah.
your fault. Like, if you have questions or doubts, it's because you're not applying the tech or whatever. With me, it was like I was a doubting Thomas, because I would understand if I was being more obedient to God, or had more faith. And yeah, God would show me once my heart was right. That's how they framed it in my crazy world. So
That's
where are we
right.
going?
And
Where are
it's
we going next here? Oh,
the
go ahead.
same one, same strategy. It's the OAC zero. It's the one in the middle for me.
Okay.
So this
Where
is
is
another one.
that? It. Okay.
Um, there's a bunch of books called the OEC, which is the Organization Executive Course. And this was also another drop on WikiLeaks, which is interesting, which is the basic staff. So look at all these policies, okay? There are 168 policies. Now, doesn't mean that you have to. I think by the time you do staff status 2, you read all of them, if not most of them. But there was one in particular I wanted to show you, because I always thought that this was kind of messed up in the head, which was the three baskets, which I don't know why. I always thought the three basket system, page 171. So I gotta go a little further on this, but yeah, if I can maybe find it here, page 171, we're gonna do, actually, you know what? This might be the org board, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, well, we have another org board that we can take a look at. Anyway, you know what? I won't go through the whole thing because it's gonna take a while. But
Okay. I'm
like
just
you have
looking
these
at the green ink. One second. I
three
just had
baskets.
somebody try to
Yeah.
clarify this. Is this true? Just to be clear,
Admin red
green
is
on white
tech.
is
You said it's reversed.
okay.
Okay, you're probably right about that. I've forgotten all that stuff. Anyway, long
It's
story
been a
short,
while. Okay.
yeah, it's
Go
been a
ahead.
while. It's been almost 20 years.
It's
But
good that
yeah,
you
the three
forget.
baskets, and the ethics, and like, you know, riding on people, and like treason and your conditions. I think did you talk about that with Aaron? I think you talked a little bit about the conditions. Yeah,
The lower
treason,
conditions. Yep. Yep.
non-existence. Yeah. So
Oh,
this kind of
Liz
gets
Gale. Oh
into
my
it.
God. The
Yeah.
three
Three
basket
basket
system. I
system.
forgot.
Yeah. It's like
See,
one
she
is in,
forgot
one is
too.
out. And it's just like, it's just this thing that everyone has these three baskets on their desk and everybody has it. Nobody uses it. It's so stupid. But everything is micromanaged. Everything is regulated. Everything is what Hubbard wanted. Doesn't matter how completely obtuse or pointless or inconvenient it is. It's just Hubbard said, Hubbard said jump, and we don't say how high, we just jump. You know what I mean? So there's this, but I do want to show actually the one that I downloaded because this is a bit crooked. But again, if you want any more references, people who collect books, you can collect and buy for pretty cheap on eBay and stuff. The OEC 0, and you can find essentially what is the policies on staff status 1 and 2 come from there if you're curious. And I know people do collect Hubbard stuff. But yeah, I was wondering, Marilyn, yeah, if I could share my screen
Yes.
to get the bigger org board.
Yep.
On there.
As soon as I see it, okay, let me take this one down. Which one is it? Okay.
Okay.
As soon as I see it, I'll pop it up. While you're doing that, I just want to add your channel to the stage and let me refresh to see where we're at. We're looking for 50s. Oh, one more. You only need one more sub to get to 50.
Really? Thank you, guys. Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
You are popular, Marilyn. Thank God, huh? That's amazing. I'm happy. Marilyn's got one of the best channels. I'm very, very selective.
I've got the best. I've got the best viewers. I think I've got the best chat.
I agree.
Of course, I'm a little bit biased, but
Yeah.
I love this.
Okay,
chat.
I am too.
Okay, we got it. Or
share screen. Here we go.
All right.
We see it now, yeah?
Yep, I see it. There it is.
We're going to go in here. So this is from my computer. Let me put that down here. And you can see up here, this is the org board, okay? So this is a generalized kind of org board this is from a Scientology website. So you can see here.
Now, what exactly is an org board? Like, I've heard that term so many times, but I'm not sure. If I had to define it, I wouldn't really know what to say.
Yeah. So you learn about this also when you start learning your staff status courses, because there's a whole, again, staff status 0, you learn about the org board, you study the org board. Hubbard couldn't have just said, I created this board, right? Everything has to be pseudo-mystical. So I guess when he was off doing his auditing or something, I guess for whatever effing reason he had, he, decided that some civilization had this org board back in the day, and that it was the most efficient board of organizing, an organization, and that it could be used for any organization. So it's not just for Scientology orgs, but this is where, if you've ever heard of the organization WISE, which is the World Institute for Scientology Enterprises, that goes to optometrists, dentists, chiropractors, etc., holistic, whatever, like these little small medical practices, doctors, physical therapists, and also businesses. And they also have a lot of business consulting firms. And this is essentially what WISE does. WISE tries to get businesses and medical practices to make their practice into the org board. And it's because I guess it's got some intergalactic, special, mystical, whatever. Of course, it doesn't work. If you are in a WISE business, you're probably a Scientologist, because otherwise there's no point. It just creates more paperwork, and it's completely inefficient. So this has one mistake on it. I just want to go through each of these divisions quickly.
Okay.
This does have one mistake, and I'll show you. But the top of the board is the executive director, or of course the ED, and that person is the person who is on top. So they're the senior executive. And then you can see here that we have the communications executive secretary. We then have the organization executive secretary, pardon me. But then in Division 6, there's actually what's called the PES, which is the public executive secretary. So if we go into, and they're in charge of just Division 6 because there's different divisions. So if we just go to elaborate some of these things, you'll see the first is the executive division. And this is where we have the Office of Source. Whose source is L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the office. This is the office that, or the department that has the LRH communicator. And that's probably a Sea Org member. Someone can correct me on that, but they're there to make sure that everything is on policy. There's also the Office of External Affairs, which in an org would be called the DSA, or the Department of Special Affairs, so the legal matters. And then, of course, the Office of the Executive Director. I want to say, now that I'm reading through this, this is probably an org of the WISE companies, but I'll make reference to Scientology back and forth because it's very similar. Division 1 is the Hubbard Communication Office. So this is HCO essentially, and it deals with what's called routing and personnel, or which would be hiring and making sure that people are trained to be on their course. So very HR-like. The Department of Communications, which would take care of internal and external emails, mail delivery, etc. So the mailroom, and then of course the inspections and reports, which has a lot to do with ethics inspections, right? You have an inspector, you have the reports. The reports are usually ethics handled. So that's HCO, so they do that. The dissemination division on Division 2 has promotion and marketing. So Scientologists always make brochures, posters, flyers, etc., and they will go out into the street to do these book stands and to sell books. And a lot of that comes from their marketing. There's also the Department of Publications, which runs the bookstore and also has to do with book stands and so forth. So booksellers are usually in the Department of Publications. And then we have registration, which of course is where we get the word a reg. So this is the Div 2 reg, and they are the people whom, if you donate to them, then this goes to gross income in order to pay the staff. So these are the people who you will sign up for a course. Division 3, my division, because I was in Treasury, there was the Department of Income. So these are people who pay the bills. And again, if you donate to this person, then the money goes to pay the bills. This is the Department of Disbursements. I think this is the most depressing department in the whole org. Why? Because not only do they disperse money, but they pay the staff. And I can tell you guys horror stories when our director of disbursement had to leave because she was an illegal resident in Germany, originally from Africa. And I had to take over this as well as doing my duty. And this was the most sad and depressing job that I've ever had in my life. Next to that is the Department of Records, Assets, and Materials. That was me. So I had internal records for every staff member based upon their pay stubs and whatever. Assets, of course, had to do with, assets and reserves of the org, which is another accounting thing, and then materials, so the supply, which also was a very depressing. I had to take control of keys. I had to order pens and pencils and paper. It was awful. Then we get into number 4. This is of course technical, and this would be the Department of Technical Services. So those are the people who I would say, I guess, run auditing, and there's where the course supervisors are and the auditors. You'll have to forgive me because these words are a bit different here. Production services, activity, production, and a Scientology org board, there's different ones that I've forgotten. But if you think of Division 4 as the people who run auditing and run the academy course room, so again, the auditors, the technical secretaries, and so forth. We go up here to Qual. These are people who look after the medical aspects of the staff and so forth. They have what's called the CRAM officer, the examiner. So once you're done with a course or an auditing service, you have a process where you actually have to pass your course. You don't just pass it. You have to get meter checks and all this kind of stuff. These are the people that do word clearings and so forth. So that's examination reviews, and then of course certifications, awards, and there's also success and stuff like this. And then public information are the people who go out, again, very similar to the marketing and the booksellers. They're the people who are called body routers. Department of Clearing is also called Department of Public Service. These are the people who run the public auditing and the public course room. And then the Department of Success is 100% like 1984 shit,
Ugh,
because you have a success. That's the given thing, that everyone who completes a course or a services has a success. They have a win, they have a gain. So this is the last person you see before you go on to your next course to tell them how wonderful your service was. And of
right,
course, if you didn't get anything out of it, you have to lie through your teeth. So I'll
right.
stop
Or go
sharing
back
through
and
that.
redo it because it's your fault.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's an
Wow.
Orwellian.
Wow. Oh my
It's a
God.
world.
Talk about, ugh. Yeah. Mind
There's
numbing,
others though. Again, guys, that was kind of more of a wise
complicated.
thing. But yeah,
I
yeah.
want to
You
pop
get
this
the
up.
gist of it anyway.
Liz Gale, all the e-meter stuff and policy stuff is educational, but definitely makes me
Yeah.
sick to my stomach. It's so gross. Good info, Mark. Yeah.
Thanks, Liz.
I'm
I've been
sorry if
watching a
it's
lot of your stuff
triggering.
too. So
Yeah.
I
I
know it's
I'm sure
unfortunate.
it's triggering to people. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that. Yeah, take care of yourself. And Liz says she
Yeah.
was the PES.
Yes.
What was that? What did that stand for again?
So the PES is the
Public
Public Executive Secretary,
Executive
and they're in
Secretary.
charge
Right.
of 6A, 6B, and 6C in an org. So they're like, like they're within the top four biggest execs in an org.
Well,
So pretty high up.
that was Liz. That was Liz. Doesn't matter to you,
Yeah.
not to me. That's where I was a COPE officer.
COPE
And
officer.
what's that again?
Yeah, that's
What's that again?
HCO. I forget which department that is, but that's in the HCO. You go to
Okay.
cope. You cope with things.
Cope with things. All right, that makes
You're going
sense. A little
cope.
bit. As much
Yeah,
sense as any of this crap can make, right?
I know,
Right.
really. There's a lot more to it, of course, but yeah, cope was an HCO from what I remember.
Yeah. Well, on a good note, we've got Rika says they were the
Oh, thank you
50th
so
sub.
much. 50
Yay!
subs.
We got
Yes.
it. We did it. We
Appreciate
did
that,
it.
everybody. Thank you so
You
much.
did it.
Thank you.
50
Thank you,
subs.
Jersey Jen.
Awesome. 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 Okay, I had a couple of comments and questions.
Yeah.
Oh, SP. I I love when ex-Scientologists come in that I've never seen before in my chat. I'm like, oh my God, you gotta just love a bit of green on white. Takes me back. What was I thinking when I left this joy? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just so complicated.
Yeah.
And one thing that you said I wanted to ask you about, and I kind of written it down as we were going along.
Sure,
You know how
sure.
LRH always said that he was like doing research and going on to the next
Mhm.
level and and getting it with like you said something about getting from the galactic, universe or whatever.
Yeah.
Like where did he get this information, supposedly? Was it from aliens? Like where like like this is a
Well,
lot. This is a lot, you know?
yeah, what I think happened in the most practical sense is LRH spent a lot of time alone, mostly in St. Hill, but also in his office on the Apollo. And then later, when he was hiding out, he would spend a lot of
Mhm.
time alone with an e-meter. And I believe that he was sort of like auditing himself. What he was
Mm.
actually doing, a lot of it is in the research, um, what's it called, the R&D or research and something. Someone out there can tell me what that is, because there's these big encyclopedic books about that, which I haven't
R&D,
read.
research and
But
development. Yeah.
yeah, research and development. So I will speculate that Mr. Hubbard was kind of losing it a little bit, being very
Right.
self-isolated, and
Right.
he believed
Ah,
that he was sort of soul traveling and was getting
wow.
information from his past lives, which he was really the
Okay.
only one that could do it. So he's in a room alone. He was
Oh,
right-handed, so he had a can in this hand. He had an e-meter in front of him, and he was just writing whatever was coming to his mind, which also could be the fact that he had some substance abuse problems. Many people believe that he wrote the book Scientology: A History of Man. Well, he or someone else, like possibly his son, was on speed. He
doesn't matter
definitely
to
was on
you. It's drugs, in
barbiturates.
my opinion. Mhm.
It was probably drugs or something, and it was really just whatever. And he was the type of person whom, because he was a fiction writer, he would just go with whatever came to mind. And that's really what the tech is. It's just some of it are his first thoughts. So, why, for example, why do we have this three basket system? There's no answer. It's just Hubbard thought
Right.
of it, and that's what it is.
Right.
Why do we have to go see the chaplain or the DINR to leave? Why can't we leave? Like, there's no, I haven't even, someone you should talk to, not a specific person, but just in general, is if you talk to anybody in the future about study technology, which I despise and hated, there's no reason why yawning means you have an MU or any of
Oh,
these
yeah,
little things that
yeah.
you learn. Like, there's no reason. There's no reason. It's just yawning, you have an MU. Why,
And that's
Hubbard?
part of the technology?
Yeah, yeah, study
Okay.
technology. If you find someone out there who will help you explain study technology, just know that there's no actual reason. It's just
Mm,
Hubbard observed it, wrote it down, and that's what we do. And so that was Hubbard. Hubbard didn't want people to question him, and his brain was unfortunately probably very sick, and he came up with these things and just did not want people to say no, did not want people to question him. And that's where
mhm.
we get the TRs, and that's where we get these technology, which is if you do it, you will benefit from it. Why?
Right.
Because there's no answer. And if you don't benefit it though, it is your fault. It's a very
Right.
sick-minded thing. So in my opinion, Hubbard's alone for decades,
Mhm.
alone, and just stuff coming to his mind, and this is just part of it. And then
And
he
he's
considers
source.
it brilliant because he's a
Yeah.
narcissist.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's it in a
he created
nutshell.
it, and also
Right.
he did. I will
Wait.
say he also did steal from other people, but that's
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna say he they claim that he is source, Scientologists say
yeah.
he is source, but he sourced it from a lot of stuff. Not to mention his quote past lives, excuse me, and probably aliens.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it is so oh wow, it's so similar to so many other cult leaders because if you think of it, a lot of them like I'm thinking of the crazy Pentecostal, fundy,
yeah,
charismatic, mystical, uh, prophet type
that's
people
right.
that I came in contact with, namely Marlene Sweeney, like to say her name any chance I get. She would go up on the mountain. She would literally go up into a mountain, stay at a beautiful resort, but still at a mountain, and God would speak to her, and she would quote fast
Yeah.
and pray. Um, I don't know. She didn't really look like she was fasting. The rest of us were withering away, but she wasn't. She was
Mhm.
like I am now, like nice, pleasantly plump. Um, so yeah, she would come and she would just be like, God spoke to me because she'd be like, I emptied myself and God filled me. So we would have to listen to her because her words were God's words because she
Mhm.
wasn't there. God, filled her. Right. So it just reminds me of that. It was like with LRH, it's like he went and into his little sanctum and with his little cans and his drugs, which they of course they didn't know, and got these
Mhm.
enlightened teachings and imparted it to all of you humble servants. It's just it
Yeah.
is really really
It,
grossly sick, so
and the
gross.
revelation in Scientology is just interesting, just to say, because Hubbard wasn't getting it from God. Like, Hubbard wasn't direct in contact with God. He didn't teach about
Right,
God. The whole eighth dynamic thing is bullshit. They created that way after the fact.
right,
Scientology is a non-theistic religion. They don't believe in those things. He believed that he was getting it again from the past lives. And it wasn't from celestial beings. It wasn't from angels. It wasn't from demons. It was from people that essentially, yeah, were aliens. And it's not like he was the first one who did that. There's always been people who have claimed to either talk to spirits or whatever. And aliens was
right,
probably just a new thing because it was the 50s, and there were cultural
right,
things going on as well. So even he wasn't that unique. He was just, I think, the most popular because of some of the things that he promised, and also some of the things worked and originally,
mhm.
and he was able to have a control over people and be very intense. And then of course he got some celebrities on board, and then it snowballed from there.
So wait, these were past lives on Earth or other planets as well? Because I'm thinking like,
a lot on other
oh, other
planets.
planets. Okay,
Oh
and that's
yeah,
where the Scientology Dianetics teaching comes
yeah.
into play, right? Because it
Not
can't just be
not
Earth,
necessarily
because Earth
Dianetics,
sucks.
not
Earth,
necessarily,
okay, but Earth is a
not
prison planet,
necessarily
so
Dianetics. Yeah.
all right. Yeah, sorry,
Oh,
I'm just trying to
no,
make
no, no.
sense of this, which doesn't make sense.
Remember, if you know anything about the Xenu story, Xenu and his galactic federation was in another part of the galaxy. So there were
Right.
like trillions of planets or billions of planets in that galaxy, and they were part of a confederation. And then they moved the people to Tigiak, which was Earth. So now we're in another part. So if you ever read a book, and it's wild, which is Scientology: A History of Man, and then there's also tons of other lectures and stuff where he talks about being on other planets. And I even
Yeah.
remember one of them in a public lecture, and I forget what the lecture was, but he says that he ran an incident on someone, and they were in charge of a nuclear reactor on a planet 3 billion years ago, and the nuclear reactor went up. It was dysfunctional, and the whole
Oh.
entire planet disappeared. It was, you know, whatever.
Did
And that
you
just
ever
speaks
blow up
to
a
the Cold
planet?
War. I don't think I did. Yeah.
Isn't that one of the questions? Hey, we got
uh,
AA Ron in the house. Hey, Aaron.
oh, hey.
Thank you for being here. Hey,
Anyway,
everybody,
it's all crazy stuff,
if
but
it's hit the like button if it's all Aaron's fault. I like to say that. Everybody everything's blamed on Aaron. I think it's Aaron's fault that the planet got blown up too. You know, seriously.
it's
Hey,
just,
good to see you, Aaron.
yeah, you can robot bodies, walrus bodies. There's a whole lots of stuff. Planets with computer cores in the center of their planet that stop working, and then the whole system and society breaks down. It's like a great episode of the Twilight Zone or Amazing Stories or
Yeah,
something, you know, from the 50s, but he worked it into a quote unquote religion, whatever you
right.
want
Don't
to
think
call
too
it.
hard about Scientology. It doesn't make sense. That's right, Kathy.
Yeah.
I know.
Amen.
I know it's funny when I was streaming with Aaron last week. I was like, and then what happened? I was like, okay, wait, were you in the volcano? And he's like, I don't really know. No, he's like, no, I wasn't in the volcano. I'm like, how did you get here? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, we're talking like it's real. It's not.
It's not.
It's
I
not
know.
real.
It's not real.
Yeah.
It's not even, it's, yeah, again, it's, I find it interesting because I love science fiction, and I'm a sucker for a good sci-fi story, so that's why I kind of like these things. But then there's got to be a cutoff where you're like, and it's fiction, you know. And Hubbard, you know, created this. Like it's not a sacred story. It's not a sacred mythology. We can debate, you know, whether or not Genesis is real or whatever, but it's been
Right.
around for
Yeah.
thousands of years, and some people take it metaphorically or whatever. It's like at a certain point, you just have to be like, this is not a century-old mythos. You know, this is just
Mhm.
like this is just science fiction, and if it was just science fiction, that's fine. You know, I like science fiction, so you know what I mean.
Right. As long as you're not being enslaved by it,
Exactly,
ruin
exactly.
your life. So I just wanted to pop up a few things that I'd started as I went along, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
of course.
You got
Not
Bo
at all.
Beats No Sheep. This was a while ago, about an hour ago. But I recognize your guess. Was it from Doug's channel? Yes, Doug Scott
Yeah,
Kramer.
I
That's
know.
how I
But
was
look up.
introduced to you. Was Dazed but Not Confused. Yep.
Yes. I had 6 videos with Doug. I really love Doug. I really miss him quite a bit. I was really thankful, Marilyn, that you did his birthday tribute, because, you know, Doug was a kind of a controversial character, but at the same time, you know, we were really good friends, and I hadn't spoken to him for about a month or two before he passed away. And he did send me a voice message, which I, you know, every once in a while still listen to, wanting to do more, you know, more streams, and that unfortunately we weren't able to do.
Right.
But yeah, I still have all my videos that I watch of him, and it's a little hard. I watched recently, maybe a month ago, I watched the first 2 that we did, and then it's one of those things where you kind of get caught up in what Doug is saying, what I'm saying, and then it kind of hit me like, you know, he's gone, and I got kind of, you know, kind of sad and thinking about
Yeah.
that and so forth. So it's hard, but I miss Doug. He was one of 3 Scientologists that have passed away that really meant a lot to me. One was Gary Scarf, one was Rob Robinson and Doug, and they were just really, really, good father figures in some ways that taught me a lot, gave me some sort of fatherly advice, and really meant a lot. So, I'm very thankful to have known them, all three of them. But Doug was just, the latest one, and I think I only knew him for a year and a half. But I'm thankful for every moment that I was able to be on his channel. So if you want to go over there, you can archive and see my name. And we did six videos there.
Yeah, I miss Doug so much. And that's how I was introduced to you, because I was really going through when I first saw one of the first of, I don't know if it was the first stream you did with him. The first one I saw was you were breaking down different religions and difference between belief and faith and all these different. And I remember asking you some questions and being like, wow, like this guy understands like some of what I'm trying to still, after 16, 17 years, deconstruct in my mind. So it was very, very fascinating. And I love every time I see you on. I didn't see the stream you did with Joe and Clearwater Chat. I'll definitely have to check that out. And I miss the nerdy days we did.
I still want to get something like that going again, or at least I'm doing those PowerPoint presentations. Tell your husband, Duncan, I still have to do the Dominion War PowerPoint from
Oh
Deep
my
Space
God,
Nine. I
he would
still
love
have
that.
to finish
Yes.
it. I only did the first couple seasons. I have to do the Dominion War PowerPoint.
Oh
So that
yes,
will be coming up in the future.
Total Trekkies. Yeah, I love that. Love that. Let's see. Joel says, I subbed to Mark. Hope we can get to his goal. And we did. You did it.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, so much. That's really amazing. Thank
Okay,
you.
so
I'm really humbled.
I had to just pick out at least one comment about this. the towards the end of that, keeping Scientology working, there was a mention of muff. Isn't not allowing something that must be
Yes, it
different.
means something very different. Yeah.
That joke went on for
I'm
a
not
while.
responsible. I'm not responsible for anything. I'm just saying it must mean something in England. If you want to find that out, that's up to you.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. I have 2 British mods and a very, very close friend who's British, who's Kelly Copter.
If you muff it up, it means something very different in England.
Yes, it really does.
Hubbard with his whips.
Oh, I accidentally unstarted something, but our friend Hef, yeah, she's like, oh no, not the whips. But yeah, I was on with reconnecting from Australia. They just did she and who else? T from Perth Scientology, and T was in here a little while ago, and Miriam Francis and friends did a big protest in Melbourne. Melbourne, is that what
I've been to Melbourne. Melbourne's a beautiful city. Reminded me a lot of Vancouver.
Yeah,
anybody's
and
ever been to Vancouver, Melbourne and Vancouver,
yeah, I had them on last night, and I forgot what we were talking about, but yeah, for
I'm
some reason I brought them up.
So to our Aussie fans, I'm a big NRL and what's it, AFL watcher and whatever, because I lived in Australia for a year, 10 months actually, and went to the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which is like the mecca of Australian rules football. So if you ever want to talk about what my favorite rugby teams are, shoot me a message and we'll talk. To my Aussie followers out there.
Awesome. Liz Gale said, if anyone ever finds an R&D set early edition before the changes, it would be gold. I want one so bad.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Okay, put it out there.
I know. It's
putting it
all
out there if
nuts,
anybody
I'm
has
sure, but research.
Joe McCoyne, has been nice seeing Mark again. Glad he got the subs. Yeah. Hope to see you more often.
Now that
Kathy,
I have my channel back.
Yes, awesome. As a never in, appreciate when they show us stuff, but I feel so worried it can trigger them. Y'all are brave. Yeah.
I'm serious. I know it's mostly for other people. Again, my time was kind of limited. So if somebody spent a lot more years, a lot more money, and a lot more time. Definitely understand. With me, I'm okay. When we talked about the director of disbursements and I mentioned giving staff pay, that's not a great memories, but whatever. I'm sort of
Yeah.
in
Or
that
not
mode.
giving
I can
staff
bring it
pay,
up.
right?
Yeah.
Or not giving them, enough to live
Yeah. Our
on. Yeah, I
staff
can.
crying and throwing chairs and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I can
happens.
imagine.
Yeah.
Awful. Hef
Yeah.
says, "Oh my God, I was always scared when the quote prophets came around. I was scared they were going to tell on me all the time. I know that feeling. I'm like, oh, they don't know my sins. Oh my God."
Uh,
That's right. And they'd always be like, "My child, the Lord is told me that, yeah, all this crap." Yep.
And it's
Mm.
speaking of prophets, Kai Wynn always called Kira my child. So there you go.
Yes, that's right. Ooh,
My
creepy.
child.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Everything will
creepy.
always go back to me. We'll always go back to
My
Star Trek. So
child.
don't worry.
That's right. All roads lead back to Star Trek. You got it.
They do.
Captain
They do.
LRH. He was a
Yeah.
drug addicted, narcissist, money hungry, sick SOB. In my opinion. Yep, you got it. Yep. So
Everything
that's
is
all I
correct
have
on that
to
sentence.
say. Yeah. People are saying MCG Stadium for the win. There you go.
Yeah. Millbrook Cricket
Everybody
Town.
talking
Yep.
about rugby now.
AFL and yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I support,
Awesome.
just to let our Aussie fans know, I lived in Queensland, so I support the Reds, who are a terrible team, but I still support them. Broncos, and the Titans, because I don't like the Lions. I like the Titans.
All
So
right,
bring them on, bring them on. It's fine. I know it's not the Swans and it's not,
right.
Geelong and whatever. At least I'm not a Collingwood fan. I'll just put that out there, and people will know what I mean.
Right. Well, this has
They
been
will.
great. Thank you so much for coming on. I always learn so much
Thank
from
you,
you.
Marilyn.
Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
So
so much.
yeah, if you think of anything else you want to present to us one of these days, let us know. And everybody, thank you for subscribing to Mark.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna pop up your
Thank
channel
you.
one more time here. Mark Turi. It's at Mark Turi, TURI 123. So anybody watching on the replay, please drop a like, a subscribe, and head on over to Mark's channel. Sorry, to your channel.
Yeah,
And,
Mike Clark is fun.
yeah, as long as we get the right channel and you get subscribers. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, and we'll see
Thank
you
you,
soon.
guys. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Marilyn.
Xenu, Marlene, everybody partake. Cheers. This is good coffee. This is why, my hubby makes the coffee.